Win number, nice to have you back with us in the paddock in Bahrain. Win number 73 for the brilliant world champion Michael Schumacher in the inaugural Bahrain Grand Prix. A 1-2 again. Rubens Barrichello, the Brazilian, follows him home. Jenson Button, second Grand Prix in a row on the podium. Trulli fourth in the Renault. Sato, the second BAR home, fifth. Fernando Alonso, eventful race for him, bringing the Renault home in sixth place. Ralf Schumacher, who will be the subject of an investigation after this race, along with Sato, in seventh place. And Mark Webber scores a point for Jaguar. I've had a pretty tough weekend. This is how it looks after 3 rounds. A 3-week break after this, by the way. 30 out of 30 for the amazing Michael Schumacher. Barrichello on 21 and Jenson Button third today and in third place in the championship on 15 points, leading Montoya by 3. Alonso and Trulli, the 2 Renault drivers, neck and neck on 11. Then Ralf Schumacher on 7. Takuma Sato has got 4 points and David Coulthard has scored McLaren's only points of 2004. And the constructors, goodness me, look at that. They've got a half a century already. 51 for Ferrari. Renault on 22. Williams have 19, neck and neck, in fact, with BAR, McLaren, Sauber and Jaguar. Let us go straight to the press conference.
Grand Prix to Jenson Button, third for Lucky Strike BAR Honda. Rubens Barrichello, second for Scuderia Ferrari Marlboro, and scoring his third win in a row for Ferrari by almost half a minute, Michael Schumacher. Michael, well, they say the epitome of the art is when you make it look easy from the outside. That's how it looked today for you. What was it like in the cockpit?
It was hard work because brakes were sort of marginal, and with tyres we had to keep an eye on. You saw, I think both companies, tyre companies, were fighting with blisters, so you really had to drive on a fine line, not push it too hard, not overdo it. Otherwise you would fall into this problem, and that sort of makes it less looking less spectacular. But I thought I'd just finish a couple of seconds ahead of him rather than half a minute.
Well, I was referring to the team, of course.
No, but it was a superb weekend. We worked our way through. It was tough at times. We looked reasonable on Friday. Had a bit difficulties on Saturday to get the balance right as condition changed. But in the final moment, we had everything spot on. We managed the first row and we managed the first and second position. That's obviously the dream result.
Indeed. It looked like quite an interesting first corner, that very tight right-hander. Bit of locking brakes there.
Yeah, obviously tyres are cold, especially the front tyres. And I started to lock up my inner side front wheel. I couldn't allow it to come off the brake to recover because it was anyway just on the limit in terms of braking point. So I had to keep it locking, which caused some vibration, which made it interesting. Those sort of 9 laps, I had to go with that flat spot, but it worked out fine.
And when you have that sort of margin, concentration, is that a problem, lapping slower cars?
The biggest problem was to stay online, honestly, because it was so difficult and slippery, just going a little bit wide. And it happened once or twice to me that because braking was so marginal and tyres were slippery, were on the edge, that I just ran a bit wide. Actually, when I think I got by Juan, in the end of the race, that was the case. I came offline and I struggled immediately the next corner. So it was very tricky.
Thank you. Rubens, backing up Michael with a great team performance there, very dominant for Ferrari today. How was your car?
My car was great. Unfortunately, the rain, we had some drops just at the start. Didn't come my way again, just like Malaysia. You know, I hope that some in the short term the rain will help. Just because my brakes were a little bit too cold, and I needed to warm them up, but on the same time I needed to save fuel a little bit on the out laps. So I had to. I almost had to avoid Michael on the first corner, and then he was very, very fast for the first couple of corners, and so he put a gap, and it was difficult to follow. But I was within 2 or 3 tenths. But I knew as my brakes were coming better, I would have a chance to race with him a little bit closer. But unfortunately, I had a small problem on the pit stop, so he opened up. When he opened up the 10 seconds, even though sometime I got it to 8 seconds, it was difficult with traffic and so on, and he was fast anyway. So it was just that 10 seconds that it was difficult to get it back.
Thank you. Jenson, another great drive, 2 podium finishes in a row.
It's fantastic. It really is. This one was a little bit more difficult. Starting sixth wasn't the best position for me. I was a little bit disappointed because I think that we had too much understeer in the car, which lost me quite a bit of time in qualifying. But it was good to fight through, as we did in Malaysia, and the car seemed very, very good throughout the race. It was very consistent. But again, as Michael said, you really had to be careful about staying on line because it was a little bit dusty offline.
Well, you had some interesting battles today. You were following your teammate, of course, and you passed Jarno Trulli in the pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, the guys in the pit stops normally do fantastic jobs at our team. We do a lot of practice, as every team does, but they seem to be very good. And I think our strategy really paid off this weekend.
And how was it with Takuma? Were you racing him there or just sort of sitting behind and waiting to see what happened?
I wasn't going to push too hard behind him. You know, it was very close between what lap we were going to stop on, so I was conserving fuel a little bit. But then he made a mistake out the back, and I was able to pull alongside him and get past. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, Michael, I have to ask you, what was the Rosewater like on the podium?
Smells very good, I have to say. Usually we sort of smell a bit strange, but now all three of us have a beautiful smell after a race.
A few words about this first Gulf Air Bahrain Grand Prix.
I think everybody here has done a superb job. They have prepared a circuit for us, which was very interesting to drive, technically very difficult, a big challenge. As well, the organization and everything in terms of pits and space availability, it was just superb. The welcomeness of the fans, of all the people here was very warm. So it was a very, very nice experience I guess we all had here, and we look forward to come back.
Yeah, indeed, we do look forward to come back here. And with me I have Takuma Sato. Now, your teammate up there, Jensen, of course, up on the podium. You went that far behind him. I think fifth equals your best ever.
Yeah, I'm very pleased and basically bring some points to the team. So very pleased that point of view, but obviously disappointed, was light on the pace until I had a problem with Johnny Flock.
Sure. You live in England, don't you? You live in a little place called Marlow. Have you looked at all the publicity for Jensen Button in England saying, hey, I want some of that?
Well, I mean, obviously very natural, the English fans and watching in Jensen, but obviously I've been living in Marlow since I was Formula 3, British Formula 3 2001, so really enjoying living in England.
And just talk to us about the progress that BAR have made this season, because it's really startling.
Sure, I mean, I was involving some development programs through the last years. Obviously, the teams improved so lot over the winters, and not only for the tyres, just chassis, the gearbox engine. Jeff made a superb car, it's very driver friendly, so it was all come together finally.
Now, just talk to us about the incident with Ralf Schumacher. I think you're both going to have to appear before the stewards afterwards. Just give us your views on what happened.
Sure,
there.
I mean, I knew he dove into the turn one, and we had to side by side through the turn one. I was able to do held on lightly side by side. Then now the turn two, he basically shut the doors. What he did is obviously he should have put some one car space on it between me and obviously the curve. That's why we tangled, unfortunately. What I did to David Coulthard, basically I put one car space so we could able to throw the two cars on it.
So what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, David Coulthard sort of obeyed the etiquette and Ralf Schumacher didn't. Is that what you're saying?
No, Ralf basically didn't give me any way. Obviously, we were side by side. I was able to through the corner two cars, but he didn't.
So you've got no problems about it being your responsibility
at all? No problem at all.
Good, okay, Takuma, just sum it up for us, though, what it's meant to you driving here in Bahrain, a race you will never forget, the first Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's fantastic, a lot of overtaking opportunity here. Even offline was really sandy and dusty. Fantastic facilities, really enjoyed it.
You got a glint in your eye. Well done for joining us so quickly and well done in the race.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, let's get a Ferrari viewpoint now from Ross Brawn. He's with Ted.
Well, Ross, what about that? We were worried about that brake pedal, first of all. Did it all stand up?
No, Rubens suffered a little bit in the middle of the race. So we were having to keep the gap on Juan Pablo, and we didn't know what strategies he was on, so we were pushing Rubens quite hard, and he was struggling a little bit with the brakes. And of course, later in the race, it got easier.
But otherwise, I mean, well, it's 3 out of 3 now. Are you starting to rest easier at night?
No, never. It's a funny business, but you never take anything for granted, and I guess it's one of our characteristics that we try and keep our feet on the ground, and we don't take anything for granted. But it's been a fantastic start to the season, and 100% finishing record, and everything worked well today, the whole package. And I've got to compliment everyone involved, not just Ferrari, but obviously all the other guys, Bridgestone, Shell, Sachs, SKF, all those guys, they're all part of the Ferrari family, and they make just as much effort as we do, and it's fantastic.
And a very happy and a very successful family they are as well. Takuma Sato, we got him first, very much the centre of attention down here in the paddock. And when you rejoin us, Mark Blundell will be here to review the Bahrain Grand Prix. Schumacher winning the Grand Prix here in Bahrain. Jenson Button on the podium again. All sorts of celebrations for BAR, but we spoke about it before the race, Mark. McLaren, we wondered about them. We wondered about the engine, and Raikkonen's engine ended up as a real kebab, didn't it? Really, it really blew in sensational style.
Well, we'll have to see what McLaren say as well, if it's an engine failure.
I should
or
probably say the car ended up as a kebab.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they say at the end of this now and see what the comments are. But certainly it was a massive failure of some sort. See the car come in here. Look, Kimi just backs out the throttle, and we're going to get the big flames come through. And it looks to me like it comes out the left bank of the engine. But as I say, we'll have to get the official comment and see what they say, Jim. But that's the end of his day, most definitely. Well cooked up. And just a terrible weekend again for McLaren, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, 0 out of 30 for Raikkonen. It's very, very early in the season to write anybody off. Michael Schumacher came back last year from 30 points behind. Can you see a similar revival from the old Maccas?
Well, the problem is that they don't have the reliability at this point and don't have the consistency at this stage of the game either. Michael Schumacher had a car underneath him which had all of those assets. McLaren don't, so that's going to be a big problem for Kimi.
It looks as though David Coulthard might at least get the consolation of a couple of points here, but he didn't last the course either.
No, obviously some problems for David. We're a little bit confused because we're not too sure actually what went on throughout the race there with David on a couple of occasions. He came in at some point and we're not sure whether the team were really ready for him. Obviously they weren't, and then went back out again on the circuit. So again, we got to get some feedback from McLaren on that.
It's fair to say things can only get better from a McLaren point of view. Let's just talk BAR. We had Takuma Sato down there. He was absolutely delighted. What about the job that BAR and Button has done here today?
Well, I think BAR, Honda, they're with Michelin. They're making some great progress. The third in the constructors. Jenson Button, second podium. Takuma Sato, obviously fifth position again. They're a team now which are making great strides, and everybody down the pit lane was worried about them on winter testing, and it's certainly showing through.
Just that incident with Ralf Schumacher, Takuma said, not my fault. I was sitting with you during the race. I get the impression you agree with him.
I'm totally 100% with Sato on what he said there, and I think you can clearly see that as the race went on. He had the same sort of problem with DC on the circuit. You see what goes on here. Coulthard is on the outside left. They go into the corner together. Sato climbs up the inside curbing. But what he does do, he makes sure that there's a little bit more space left for DC on the left of him. And eventually it goes through nice and smoothly. He does the right thing. They just give a little bit of respect to each other on the race circuit, and it made a lot of sense.
Respect, is that the crucial word?
It is respect, yeah, most definitely. There's a little bit of a moral conduct out there where we all have to follow. Now and again, some guys go over the line, and the consequences can be quite grave.
And Jenson Button on the podium again. He's making a habit of it now, isn't he?
It's fantastic for Jenson. Incredible situation for seeing Button there, second time in a row on the podium. All of these guys down here are very happy, but I think there'll be a lot of Brits back at home who are happy too.
Yes, absolutely. We can have a word with Patrick Head now at Williams.
Patrick, first of all, we were kind of listening to Juan Pablo spluttering a bit. We weren't quite sure what the problem at the end was.
He was losing gears. We had a gearbox problem, and then he had a hydraulic problem at the end, which meant that he lost the throttle. So he was sort of walking wounded from 10 or 12 laps to go or so.
And Ralph's race, bit mess?
Well, bloody mess, really. I mean, he had that bump with Sato, drove in very slowly and lost a lot of time, put new tyres on the car, and then he was okay, but too far behind. So not good.
Not good. Williams' verdict. Just give us your verdict of the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Unbelievable. Fantastic facility. The weather didn't really play, did it? We didn't need it. We still had a great race. I'm looking forward to come back already.
I know, terrific. And I say the old storm stayed away, didn't it? But we're probably glad it did in the end. But again, the Ferraris are away and gone.
Well, somebody has to do something about slowing down Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, and at this point in time, I don't see anyone down the pit lane.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Of course, just after midnight tonight, the highlights here on ITV1, and that show repeated tomorrow on ITV2. Tuesday night, though, ITV1 is the place. It is a must-see Champions League quarter-final.
Arsenal, Chelsea.
This is Heineken Janssen! First blood is blue blood. This is Pires, and that's 1-1. Desai is late and off.
Arsenal, Chelsea, Champions League, quarter-final. Second leg, watch it, only on ITV.
Do not miss it. Next Sunday at 2, you can get up to speed.
On next week's Speed Sunday, we'll be live at Thruxton for the first round of the British Touring Car Championship.
We'll look back at the first ever Bahrain Grand Prix.
We'll look ahead to the San Marino Grand Prix as the Formula One circus heads to Europe.
Plus, we'll have the fascinating story of former F1 driver Alex Zanardi, who lost both his legs in a crash.
And of course, we'll have a star-studded lineup of guests live in the studio, plus all the news from the world of motorsport. Join me, Lee Mackenzie.
And me, Matt Smith, for Speed Sunday live next weekend.
Yes, that's right. After a 3-week gap, we return with the start of the European season, the San Marino Grand Prix. Extensive coverage from Imola throughout the weekend of April the 24th and 25th. Button on the podium, a hat-trick of victories, though, for Michael Schumacher. Only 6 drivers have won the first 3 races in the championship. They have all gone on to win the title. Bye-bye.
If you'd like to know more about Formula One,